Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Teaching is a rewarding profession, but it comes with its fair share of challenges. That's where ADAPT come in. We're not your typical trade union, but instead a modern, apolitical alternative, offering expert legal, employment and mental health support. Protection without the politics. So what makes ADAPT different? We're always apolitical and independent, specialised solely in supporting individual teachers. Our caseworkers are professionally qualified, ensuring you always get the best advice. Plus, there's 24/7 mental health support. Whether it's a simple contract check or handling serious allegations, ADAPT are here for you. Join the thousands of educators who've chosen ADAPT to protect their careers. Subscribe at adapt.org.uk today. ADAPT, supporting school staff, protecting careers.
You are with me, Lucy Neuburger, for the next, well, however long really. We can see how we go this evening. I'll tell you why, because my assistant head teacher, I'm sure, thinks I'm absolutely mad, because I was trying to explain to her today that I don't feel unwell, in that I haven't got a sore throat, I haven't got a headache, I haven't got a stuffy nose, I haven't got any of the kind of classic illness symptoms, don't feel sick, anything like that. But I just feel a bit weird in my body at the moment. And I'm not kind of quite sure what that's about. Yesterday, I felt like I had that feeling where I hadn't woken up properly, and that feeling kind of stuck with me all day. And today I just feel a bit sort of weird in my own skin. I mean, I think it's probably partly dehydration. I spend all day going on at children about needing to hydrate, needing to drink lots of water, and then don't necessarily do it myself. And I'm fairly sure coffee and tea do not count as hydration, but we try. So so not feeling 100%, but we're going to press on anyway, because that is what we do here at Teachers Talk Radio, and that's what we do as teachers, sometimes to our detriment. And I know I've talked about teacher martyrdom before. I've talked about where we get to the point where we have no choice but to take time off, when actually really we should take time off when we start to feel unwell, so we can be back to it sooner. But with that in mind, it is also World Mental Health Day today. So I've seen a few things on Twitter. I've seen a few posts kicking around, and now more than ever, not that it ever hasn't been important, but it continues to be, I think, be even more important. Mental health well-being is certainly formulating much more of our work in the classroom as teachers, but also for ourselves. So I do wish you, I suppose this makes sense, a happy World Mental Health Day, and I hope you are all looking after yourselves as we edge towards the end of this first half term. It's gone quite quickly, hasn't it? I mean, I feel it has. I've actually got 3 weeks until half term, because we take our half term at the beginning of November here, because actually the 1st of November is a public holiday in Portugal, and I think it's done to kind of sneak in that holiday day into our half term, so we don't take it as an extra day. But I might be wrong. I might be being cynical about that one. You can judge as you wish. But I think, I mean, certainly this first half term has been tiring. I think that, I mean, we've been saying this in the wake of COVID, that for the years in the wake of kind of the sort of main pandemic years, it's been a different beast. It's been tough to kind of stick with it, to maintain that energy. I know we talk a lot about that our resilience is different, that just the way we handle life, I think, is different now. And certainly as teachers, that's of course feeding into and dealing with children and young people who have been through the same thing we have in a variety of different ways, and it's affected all of us differently. And this is actually going to feed into part of what I'm talking about this evening, which I will get to. I know that I spend time going around the houses first, but I will get to this evening's topic, which is the future of classroom teaching. And I can see that Nihad is already in there, who's joining me for a little bit later on, and I'm sure will tell me off shortly if I have pronounced his name incorrectly, which I always live in fear of. I have a child in my class who told me in no uncertain terms the other day, because I have been guilty of, he's got one of those names that you can shorten easily, and I've been calling him the shortened form, just offhand, not as a habit, just kind of here and there. And he took me to one side and said, no miss, I prefer, the longer version of my name, if that's all right with you. He was so polite about it, and I felt terrible, because of course it is a personal thing, and when people get your name wrong, I I am acutely aware with my surname that often it appears misspelt, and often emails take a while to get to me because my surname has been spelled incorrectly, not deliberately, but it's one of those things, isn't it, that kind of you have to be careful of and mindful of. Um, what else has been going on? I feel like now I do these shows every 2 weeks. I always feel like, I think at the time I always feel like I have a lot to catch you up on, and then when it comes to it, I sort of think, oh, it's all flown out of my brain. But no, my year fours are muddling along nicely. They're as bananas as ever. We had photo day today, so we have our class photos, and these go in the yearbook along with lots of other pictures throughout the year. And honestly, it's the smartest I've seen most of them look all year. We had the hairbrushes out, we had them adjusting each other's collars and things like that. We had posing practice and all sorts of things. And I thought, my goodness me, half of you aren't this well turned out on an average day. And they said, well, it's these go in our year, but we have to look our best. I'm slightly concerned though, because I've got as I'm sure you all do, kind of a sort of rotation of outfits that I wear as a teacher, and I've kind of taken to wearing these sort of 50s style dresses, and mainly because you can't see up them, down them, or through them, as is the creed when you are a female teacher. I mean, it's trying to dress as a teacher in general is a white hot nightmare. But I have these dresses that I wear on rotation. But what has accidentally happened is that every time there is a photo opportunity, I appear in the same dress. So there is a photo as you go into the school where you kind of have the staff photo wall, and it's quite clear I'm wearing this dress. I'm pretty sure that when I've been photographed around the school, because we have somebody in school who kind of takes photos quite regularly again for the yearbook, fairly sure I've been in that dress. And then today in the class photos, so people are going to think that I don't own anything else, but I do rotate them, and it just so happens that I seem to be in this one particular dress every time. So I think the yearbook's going to be quite interesting this year, or I'm just going to have to buy more dresses. What else has been going on? I suppose we've got all kinds of things coming up. I mean, I have already got children talking to me about Christmas and checking Christmas books out the library, and I refuse to acknowledge anything kind of winter holiday related until post Halloween. And I don't know about you, but we definitely allow kids to dress up in school. Some like to, some don't. It very much depends. But for the most part, they're already getting excited about that. And as soon as that's done, my dread is always, and I've said it to you before, and I'll say it to you again, I don't like Christmas. This has become a kind of running joke, particularly since my time at Teachers Talk Radio. I am that primary teacher that has openly said, I'm not anti-Christmas, I'm not Grinch, I don't spoil it for anybody. And I think, you have to make sure it is about kids, but I do, year on year, when the song rehearsals start sort of at the back end of October, early November, a little bit of my soul does kind of leave my body, and I think, oh gosh, I've got to listen to the same old classics for the next however many weeks. And I have to psych myself up for that one. But I promise not to be a misery guts. I promise to not let you all down, and I promise to try and find some cheer, and to not get mad when, I mean, luckily my classroom actually has floors, not carpet, so as and when the inevitable glitter comes out, it's going to be a little bit easier to tidy up. But I have digressed massively from the topic in hand, as always, as I end up doing in these shows before I get to the actual point. So let's park all of that and let's move on to today's topic in hand, which is the future of classroom teaching. And this is a huge area, huge sort of topic, that can go in many different directions, as I'm sure it will this evening. And certainly, when I talk to my guest in a few minutes' time, I'm sure his take will take us in one direction. And you might want to chip in yourselves, which you can do. You can always request to speak. Stop the ever increasing monologue that I tend to indulge in. So please do feel free to cut me off at any point. Agree, disagree. We actively encourage that at Teachers Talk Radio, because that is the whole point of us being here. But this whole idea came about from something that my fellow host, Brent Poland, who you can often hear on Education Tonight, he also often appears on Weekly Review, and he made a comment recently about people wanting education to suit themselves. And that resonated with me. I actually scrolled it down in my notebook at the time when we were talking about, I can't remember how that quote came up, but it made me think, not so much in a negative way about this, but just what that means. There are maybe some negative elements to it, where education has changed so much now, and there is so much that is demanded of us as teachers on a daily basis, be it the hats that we wear, the sort of proverbial hats. I'm sort of talking about from 1 minute we are teacher, next minute we are social worker, we are paramedic, we are all these things, and all these things that we do on a daily basis. So there's that aspect. There's the ever increasing technology aspect that we're having to do battle with. There's social media, AI. All these things have meant that teaching is ever evolving, ever changing. And certainly in the wake of, and I know I still go on about it, even though we're trying to forget about it, in the wake of COVID, things have changed, things are different. And there are, honestly, I won't lie to you, there are occasions where I stand in my classroom, and I am fortunate enough I work in a very privileged teaching environment. I have only 22 in my class. I'm in an international school. I can't even articulate this evening. I'm in an international school, and from the outside looking in, it seems like we don't have the issues that maybe other schools do, and or go through the issues, but they are there, and they do exist. And sometimes I wonder whether teacher standing in front of a classroom full of children, as has been the way for many, many years. I know that what we do in the classroom, how we operate, how we are as teachers, there's, I know that children like to come up to me and say, oh, my grandparents used to get a ruler across the knuckles at school. Would that ever happen now? I'm like, no, it wouldn't. So, as much as we are still classroom teaching, there are obviously things that have changed and evolved along the way. These fads that come and go. There's all sorts of things that, we could be here forever going through the various trends, be it related to data, related to curriculum. Should we be explicitly teaching grammar at primary level? Should we not? Spelling tests, the list goes on. But we are still teaching in a very traditional kind of teacher at the front of the class in front of you way. And that idea has not really changed all that much. But is it sustainable anymore? Is it the way forward? Is it how we're going to see education in the future? And there's lots of debates and things and pieces of research online. And again, as always, I went down my research rabbit hole, and I've got pieces of paper highlighted and scattered around me to see kind of what people's thoughts are on this. And I know I said last week I would pop these things in my show notes. I epically failed, 2 weeks ago, to do so. So I will try and make sure someone will remind me to share these various articles and bits and pieces that I've found. Should you want some additional reading, you might not. It's entirely your call. But one article I stumbled across, which is exactly kind of what we're talking about at the moment, is traditional classroom learning becoming obsolete? And this is from somebody who is actually writing from a student perspective. And he said, he can't help but question whether conventional classroom learning is becoming outdated, particularly with the advancement of technology. And of course, the big thing at the moment is thinking about AI, ChatGPT, how all that is going to be fitting into our teaching. Should it be fitting into our teaching? Should it not? Excuse me. How are we going to regulate it? How are we going to ensure that it's not used for cheating purposes and things like that? And I know there are many teachers and many people behind the scenes working very hard to try and make sure that this is incorporated positively, that we're using it in ways that enhance education, and that we make sure that the children and young people we are teaching are being taught to embrace it, but with caution, to the point where at my school we are now encouraging, and I'm sure other schools are doing this as well. We've almost we're about to have somebody step into the role of kind of AI lead almost, or sort of technology lead, where their role is going to be to consult with other teachers and find out what they're doing, how they're doing it, how they can support, because we need these people now. We need to if we are going to continue with our traditional classroom teaching, as it were, and all these things coming in, we need a way to manage that. But he said, as classroom teaching does have its plus points, it's great to be learning from a teacher. Of course, there is that social aspect, but in the digital age is the idea of being able to study at your own speed and, create your own curriculum. I know that out here, and it's actually a global organization now that exists, that it's aimed at secondary students. And they do create their own curriculum, and they do have online tutors, and they can go to hubs and they do their learning like that. And they pass exams and they are able to go on to international universities. And it's in place of traditional schooling, in inverted commas. So these things are popping up all over the place. And I know that Tom Rogers spoke to somebody recently whose name unfortunately escapes me. I'm sure he'll remind me, who works at a remote school. So it exists entirely online, and she works from home. And that's how it's done. And I've said this to friends and colleagues, I do feel we are going to see more of this. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I don't think that you're going to wake up one day and all your schools are going to be closed with tape in front of them as such. But we are going to see, and we are starting to see already, this evolution of more online education now that we know that it can be done, and also these hybrid approaches as well. And this article goes on to talk about just that as well. It sort of says, despite the fact that there are advantages and disadvantages to online learning, that they believe the future is going to be a hybrid of traditional and online learning. And by combining both of these worlds, maybe it's an opportunity for learning to become more flexible, more convenient, with access to a wider choice of materials, and also to wider resources as well. Because I don't know about you, but increasingly, a lot of my resources that I use are online. When children are doing research projects, I do try and encourage the use of books and things as well, but you find that they tend to lean more towards the iPad because it's easy to kind of Google something. It's so easy to find that out. But that, of course, relies on your access to technology as a school, and there are costs and implications that come with that as well. And so I question whether, it's difficult to know where all this is going to head and where it's all going to arrive at, because certainly looking at AI, I've kind of done my own research. I know that there are now full-on conferences that are happening. And I know Nahad's been part of some things recently where he's written and talked about various things to do with AI and trying to use it not only to support students, but to support teachers as well. And so maybe we will end up still in our classrooms, but utilizing this technology and all these different things that are coming into our world in a more positive way. So I'm just going to try and get Nihad on now. I can see that he is there and ready. He just needs to accept his speaker request. So hopefully he is there and ready to go. We'll give him 1 minute to just ready himself, and hopefully he will get to us in a moment. But while we're waiting for him to appear, I wanted to, well, there's so many, I do this every single time. It's like when I do my notes for weekly review, I end up scrolling things in an excited manner and then losing track of what I want to go to next, because there's so many different things happening. Oh, I can see. Good evening to you, Nihad. You're there and ready to go. How are you doing this evening? You just need to unmute yourself. Hopefully he can unmute himself. I can see that he's there. Oh, the joys of technology. See, this is it. Even, with the greatest will in the world, you want it to do its thing, and sometimes it does not. But isn't that just part and parcel of the world we live in today? So, Nihad, if you are there, you just need to unmute yourself as soon as you are ready to do so. So, if we can get some help from admin behind the scenes, that would be great. And I'm hoping that you can all still hear me as well, and that everything is going
I can't,
smoothly.
because Nihad doesn't follow us, so I can't actually DM him. So Nihad, it's in the bottom left, the unmute button.
He's there as a speaker. He just needs to unmute himself, and I think that he's maybe not quite clear on that. So hopefully we can get Nihad with us momentarily, because I can see that he's there. And I'm sure he can hear me. I just don't think he's quite figured out the magic of Twitter Spaces. Oh, it's not Twitter, it's X now, isn't it? I keep forgetting that. Sorry, Uncle Elon. Didn't mean to upset you with that one. But I suppose while we're waiting for Nihad, I should remind you that teaching and the things that we do on a daily basis, it is such a rewarding profession, but it does come with its share of challenges, as we are talking about this evening, particularly with increased use of technology, with all the different roles that we have talked about as well. But that's why we have EDAPT, and they're not your typical trade union, but instead a modern apolitical alternative offering expert legal employment and mental health support. They are protection without the politics. So they are always apolitical and independent, and they specialize solely in supporting individual teachers. And should you ever need them, I hope you never do, but should you need them, you get a caseworker that is assigned to you personally and is professionally qualified and ensuring that you get the best advice, as well as 24/7 mental health support. So there's a lot that comes with being part of EDAPT. So whether it's a simple contract check or handling serious allegations, and again, I hope that never happens to any of you, you can look to EDAPT for that support. And should you want to find out more, you need to go to edapt.org.uk. So thank you, EDAPT, for all your support recently as well. I think we're still trying to get hold of Nihad. So while we do that, I'm going to just carry on taking you down my research bubble. And of course, if any of you want to jump in and are able to, I think we are getting there. Nihad, can you hear me? You just need to, you were nearly there. You just need to unmute yourself.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes, you're there. Good evening to you. You did it. Well done.
I think I had a speaker plugged in, which was messing it up. So I've just taken that out. Sorry, not a speaker, a microphone plugged in, which was messing it up for some reason. But hopefully you can hear me okay now.
Oh, I can. Yes, I'm sorry about that. It possibly was that my instructions to you weren't 100% clear. So I appreciate you persevering. And now we have you here. So, and also, can I just ask, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
So that the N is actually silent.
Oh, is it?
No, I'm just messing with you. You were saying it perfectly.
I was dying a little bit inside just then. Oh no! Oh, I can't believe I fell for that as well, because I was like, well, then if the N is silent, Lucy, how does that? Just roll with it. Just go with it. You're not feeling great. Just smile and wave. So, good evening to you. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good. Lovely to have you on. Thank you for being here. Just before we get stuck into to our chat, can you just tell me a little bit about who you are and your current role in education?
Yeah, so I used to be an English teacher a long time ago, and for a long time I've worked in edtech in a number of different companies, and I'm now the founder and CEO of a company called Vibble, which is a kind of feedback management platform to reduce teacher workload. I've become very interested in AI over the last kind of year or so, just because of the impact that it might have on my business and the wider sector. And at the moment, Vibble doesn't actually have any AI in it. It is something that we'll have to build into the product, because I think over time, every product will have some element of AI in it. It's a bit like every business has got a social media page. It's just going to become part and parcel of every tech offer. But I've been involved in lots of talks on AI because of my interest in it, and also I think because my business is based in the Northeast. So if you've got an interesting education technology business in the Northeast, you just get invited to everything because it's a small place.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize kind of how big the sort of the kind of tech hubs are in the Northeast, because or in the North actually in general, because my brother is works sort of more in the sales side of tech, but he's based in Manchester, and apparently there's a lot going on. So seems to be busy up there. Seems to be things happening. So in terms of kind of AI itself, when was it that you sort of caught the bug, if you like, got interested in this? Because it sort of, in my mind, things like things that we talked about before, like ChatGPT and all the things like that, it sort of came out of nowhere. But I'm sure that's not really the case, is it?
So for me, it was earlier this year, and I wrote a blog about this recently, and I mentioned a bit in the blog about where I kind of started this journey from. But I was speaking with a man called Dr. Aaron Hamilton. So he is head of educational research at Cognition Learning Group, and he recently released a working paper with Dylan William and John Hattie on the impact of AI in education. And I met with him, I think it was in March of this year. And I remember talking with him about AI and just thinking, this guy's nuts. Like, I remember just thinking, this sounds so far away from where we currently are. But it kind of piqued my interest, and it made me want to read more and more. And the more I learned about AI, the more I realized that I was just ignorant to what was happening with AI, and the scale of change that's coming with it is really quite unprecedented. And I got invited to do a panel talk on AI at Newcastle University a couple of months ago with Dan Fitzpatrick, who's the AI educator. So he was like the headliner at the event. So if he was like Beyonce, I was like the supporting act. Yeah, it was really interesting kind of being part of that debate. And obviously I was a lot more informed by that point, but even then I was still learning lots of new things from all of the different speakers. So we had lots of professors there from, Newcastle University, Durham University, who were specializing in AI or data in AI, talking about their perspectives and how it could impact education. So yeah, that's where my kind of interest has been. I've just been a little bit obsessed, to be honest, ever since.
Teaching is a rewarding profession, but it comes with its fair share of challenges. That's where ADAPT come in. We're not your typical trade union, but instead a modern, apolitical alternative, offering expert legal, employment and mental health support. Protection without the politics. So what makes ADAPT different? We're always apolitical and independent, specialised solely in supporting individual teachers. Our caseworkers are professionally qualified, ensuring you always get the best advice. Plus, there's 24/7 mental health support. Whether it's a simple contract check or handling serious allegations, ADAPT are here for you. Join the thousands of educators who've chosen ADAPT to protect their careers. Subscribe at adapt.org.uk today. ADAPT, supporting school staff, protecting careers.
I mean, and certainly from sort of the sort of look into you, that sounds like I'm stalking you on the internet. I'm not, but yeah, that this has kind of taken over your world in a way. But I mean, obviously you used to be in the classroom, and you're still kind of sort of involved from kind of the outside looking in, I suppose. But in terms of traditional classroom, I mean, do you see, because I don't know if I'm being overly cynical here or getting ahead of myself, but do you see traditional classroom teaching sort of gradually winding down, or do you think that actually, there will always be a place for the way that we teach, and that teacher pupil interaction, and that the tech that we're looking at, the AI and all of the rest of it, is just going to become part of what we're doing and part of what we're embracing, that actually, we're not all going to end up at home, learning from robots?
So the full answer is I don't know. I think, but I suspect that traditional classroom education will stay for a number of reasons. But I also suspect that there'll be a lot of evolution rather than transformation, just because of the different choices that we'll have available. So the first thing to consider is obviously AI. So at the moment, ChatGPT-4 has a current IQ of about 160, which is around the level of Stephen Hawking. And if you think of kind of technological advancement, if you look at like 1995, when Bill Gates was on the Letterman show talking about how we'd be able to listen to like a football match through the internet, and everyone thought it was crazy, and they were mocking him, saying, have you heard of radio? Why would you want to do that? Obviously, what he was talking about was kind of on-demand services, which, as you know, from Netflix and everything, Spotify has massively boomed in the last kind of generation. But at the time, that was all new. Now, if you think of that moment back in 1995, and then you think of like 2005 when the iPhone was released, the digital transformation that took place over those 10 years was just absolutely astounding, to get from that point to that point in 2005. Now, the challenge with AI is that because AI advances so much faster than traditional technology, because it's not just humans that are affecting the transformation, that the AI itself can learn. And because it's so intelligent at the moment, and it'll get more and more intelligent, the rate at which it can learn will probably also increase. So it's not crazy to assume that within 10 years, ChatGPT will be 10 to 100 times smarter than what it is right now. And that's what people call artificial general intelligence. So to get to that point, it's a matter of time. It's a matter of when, not if. And when the AI gets to that level of intelligence, it should be able to do most things better than humans, like almost anything that you can think of. So rather than a doctor, rather than going to a GP, you would kind of maybe take a photograph of a rash and then send it to an AI, and it'll give you a prescription, because it would probably be much more accurate than a doctor, and also much faster. You won't have to faff around trying to make an appointment. Lawyers will be replaced. Accountants will be replaced. Most jobs will get replaced. The only jobs which I think will be quite tricky to replace is actually teachers, because of a number of reasons. And the main reason is, when you think of education, it's not just about learning, it's also about childcare. So when you send your kids to school, it enables parents to then go to work and to feed the economy. And that need is probably not going to go away, even if we got to a point where AI replaced all jobs and there was no more money, which is actually a possible outcome, by the way.
Oh, gosh.
Even if we got to that point where there's actually no point for people to work, and it's just like a universal basic income, which the government just pays to people to just live because there's no need to work, there would still probably be a requirement for some schools, because if you think back to the past, 17th, 18th century, when people were very wealthy, they would still send their kids to boarding school, because parents need time for themselves as well. So there's always going to be that requirement for students to be away from their parents learning, for some people. And in terms of how that learning happens, because we are hardwired to be social animals, it makes sense to have that learning take place in some kind of a community, a bit like a school. And if the learning is taking place in the school environment, it makes sense to have teachers and adults leading that process. So I find it difficult to think that teaching will be removed completely, but there will certainly be a lot of changes. So I'm sure you already know this because you were talking about it earlier, but see, homeschooling has been rising since the pandemic.
Yep.
And private schools are struggling in different areas. So prep schools are struggling a lot more in the UK now. And I think habits are changing. And in the past, people used to send their kids to private school because they wanted them to get the best job or the best results. But now, because of Ofsted and all the pressure that's on state schools, there's some state schools which get just as good results as private schools. So there's less of a differentiator between those two different value propositions for parents. And more parents are choosing private schools actually because they want to escape the state system. They might not want their kids to do the SATs, for instance, at year 6. They might want better SEN provision, which they can't get in the state sector. So what the private school system is now mopping up is more variation of choice. And if we now have tools on the market which can deliver teaching and learning through AI, which, by the way, I think could probably deliver learning potentially even more effectively than humans, when the intelligence gets to that level, because it would be able to read exactly what different micro expressions mean and push people forward in different ways, then that might mean that some people would choose to learn through AI. But just because something is done doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And I use the analogy here of there's a vegan food company who created these vegan burgers that could bleed. You would buy this vegan burger and you'd cook and it would bleed. And yeah, exactly. So you're kind of regaling a horror there. And
was it that obvious?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a perfect example of just because something is scientifically possible doesn't mean it should always be done.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Yeah.
And just because an AI could potentially get a student to get an A in maths more reliably and more effectively and faster than if they went to a normal teacher, which I think is probably possible as well, eventually, it doesn't mean that should always be done. And actually, I think knowledge will be less valued as society changes from AI, because actually, what's the point? What's the point of knowing loads of stuff if AI knows it for you? It's like we don't need to memorize maps anymore because we have a sat nav that gets us from A to B. Whenever I meet someone who's a different generation from me and they start a conversation with me about the A road that they took to this road, my brain just switches off because I know that that's not useful information, because I grew up in the generation where we would use a sat nav. So I almost just don't. My brain doesn't take that information in. And it's the same, for the generation that's going to be coming up through AI. If they know that AI can do all this stuff, actually, where's the motivation to learn how to read? Where's the motivation?
That's very true. And the handwriting as well and things like that. Because I suppose as much as we're talking about traditional classroom teaching, we're also, obviously, this kind of goes without saying, we're talking about curriculum as well. And what we're doing in this conversation is almost kind of blowing holes in traditional curriculum, which of course has not changed really I know it's, of course it does change but it doesn't change in terms of, I'm not articulating this well, but it doesn't change in terms of, there's still reading targets, there's still writing targets, grammar targets, etc. All these kind of very sort of traditional, in inverted commas, skills, if you like. But as you say, the more kind of technology develops, the need for these things is becoming less and less.
Yeah. And this is something that Aaron Hamilton, Dylan William and John Hattie put in their working paper about this, like a real existential problem for reading as a skill. Is reading going to become like Morris dancing or fly fishing? Is it going to be one of those skills that is quaint, that is nice to learn if you have an interest in it, but actually serves no functional purpose in terms of what you have to do on a day-to-day basis? So there's all these challenges in terms of, what is our telos? What is our purpose going to be as learners? What are young people going to need to learn in order to thrive in the new world? And I think that's going to bring some real challenges. But I think there's always going to be a place for traditional classroom teaching to some respect. It might be that instead of teaching parenthetical clauses, teachers may be teaching art or dance or sport, or things that are not easily replaced by AI.
Yeah, and so do you also think, I was just kind of going to backtrack to what you said, do you think our role will also become more, I mean, obviously it's hugely pastoral. I mean, I'm speaking from kind of with my primary head on. I mean, it's hugely pastoral across the board. But do you think that there would be greater emphasis on, if we were to keep schools open, as it were, on that side of it too? Because again, the kind of well-being and mental health. Yes, I know you're talking about AI doctors and things like that, but in terms of I'm not suggesting that teachers are going to become therapists, but certainly I do find that I mean, I know you can access all kinds of, you can speak to a counsellor on the phone. You can, there are chat systems that exist as well. But for some people, they want to talk to a real person. They want to have that interaction. They want to share their feelings with an actual real life adult, for example.
Yeah, and it's exactly the same argument people made about people wanting to go to chat to cashiers at a supermarket instead of shopping at Amazon. I think there's always going to be a requirement for people to shift towards things that are easier and faster. Where I think teaching is different from other sectors like doctors or lawyers, where they're providing a service to a person, to an end user. Teaching's not providing a service to an end user, because the service that you're providing is to the child, and actually they're not the person who's deciding that they go to school. It's a mixture of the government and parents and a range of other factors, which is requiring that child to be in school. So it's a little bit more of a complex relationship than that simple transactional relationship that you'll get between going to a shop to buy something or like going to a lawyer to pay them for them to write a contract. It's a bit more of a complex thing. And because there's more stakeholders involved, I think there'll probably always be a place for some level of traditional classroom teaching. But yes, it may be that actually teachers will have to spend less time teaching things like maths or English, because they might go into the school and actually go through an AI program to learn maths for like an hour, and then suddenly come off of that program and then do a drama session with the other students to kind of build that socialization and build that sense of community, which I think is something that AI is not going to be able to replace very, very easily.
Yeah, there's an article here that I've got that is actually from Education UAE, that talking about the future of education is lying beyond rather traditional learning. And one of the things that two of the things rather that it talks about is the idea of the collaboration and those kind of interpersonal skills, which again I think AI would struggle with, but also the idea of a safe space, because for a lot of children, and we discovered this during COVID. I mean, it's not that we didn't know before, but there are many children who consider the school environment their safe space, and that place that they go to feel kind of okay when home is less stable or doesn't quite provide the sort of the safe, nurturing environment that it should. So maybe there is still a place for schools in that capacity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really excellent point, and that it also brings us on to like the political appetite to replace traditional education. I think whichever politician is in power, if they were to get on stage and say they wanted to get rid of schools, I think they would get a sense of outrage from people across the country, because obviously parents are key stakeholders in this decision, and parents will always value human contact over machine contact to some to a degree. So that is a really emotive and powerful point, which I think would prevent a lot of wide-scale change. But what we might have is, instead of having like a state school system, an independent school system kind of dominate, we might end up having like state schools, independent schools, and more home schools with these online with basically like online tutors that can that can teach students, for parents that want to do that, or you might have independent schools that are set up solely with the intention of doing that. A bit like Elon Musk had one of those in SpaceX built just for his kids. So he built a school just for his kids that was using AI to teach his kids, and they made it into a whole school for all the staff. And then once his kids got old enough to go to university, he closed it because he couldn't be bothered spending millions of pounds on a school which his kids weren't using anymore. So you might have parents like him who would like that kind of education, and now they'll have a choice to do that. But that's likely still going to be the minority. For there to be a fundamental shift to get rid of traditional education on the whole, I think that looks far, far more unlikely, simply because of the reasons I mentioned about us being social animals and parents needing somewhere to send their kids. And also just the teaching profession is one of the most resistant to change compared to every other profession I've been in. We still do things fairly similar to the way we've done things in the last 100 years. The whiteboards have changed, but it's still the same kind of structure. We still have timetables. We go into a classroom setting. They might not be sitting in rows anymore. They might be in group environments, but it's still very similar to that kind of Victorian structure that was originally created. So I think it's a very, very resistant sector to change, and I don't think it will change completely. I think there'll be evolution, but I don't think there'll be a revolution.
Interesting. Well, Nihad, I'm going to pause you there for the moment, but do stick around, and if you are able to, because I've been sort of very interested by everything you've been saying. So please do continue to hang out on the show. But I'm just going to bring in, because something has piqued Mr. Taylor's interest. So it might be that he wants to ask about something that you've said. So I'm just going to bring him on and see what he's got to say. Good evening to you, Mr. Taylor. You need to unmute yourself if possible.
Bottom left, Mr. Taylor, hopefully. Are you on a phone? Helps to be on a phone if possible.
Hopefully we can get Mr. Taylor on. Something has piqued his interest, so hopefully we'll get to find out what that is momentarily, and because I'm sure it's something. But just on a different note, my friend Hannah was in the space earlier, and she said something which I've actually pinned to the top of the space. I don't know what is wrong with me being able to articulate this evening. And she said to me, super interesting topic, and definitely agree that schools are going to need to be more flexible. But in my own class, I'm actually moving away from any technology. I used to do all Key Stage 3 learning on iPads, and now I'm back to good old pen and paper. So I suppose what I wanted to get to eventually with this conversation was, we're talking about the idea of incorporating all this technology and all this AI into our learning, and I suppose it's a silly question in a way. And Nihad, you might want to come back in on this, or indeed anybody else. But is it just another fad? Is it just another thing that we're going to kind of embrace, do all the things with, and then actually there's going to be, I don't know, a moral panic of some sort, or some kind of outcry where people are going to go, no, it's too much tech, it's too much this, it's too much that. Actually, we just need to go back and do it the old-fashioned way. We need to go back to pen and paper, paper-based books, all of those things. Is that where are we going to kind of come? Not quite. Well, are we going to kind of do a 180? I suppose it would be, wouldn't it? Back to the old way, or are we going to? Is that not going to be an option? Are we just going to have to? Are we at the point of no return now, where if you can't beat them, join them? I don't know, Nihad, if you have thoughts on that.
I think there's always going to be a place for writing things with a pen on paper. I know in the US, the vast majority of kids submit their work on a computer, and they type up their work on a computer. You mentioned you're in an international school, but I know that international schools vary massively depending on whether they're following a UK curriculum or they're following the Common Core US curriculum, and the way in which they're taught differs. But I know in the UK, obviously, it's quite typical that you do work with a pen and paper, and there's research and evidence to show that that helps with short to medium term memory. Actually, writing when you're when you're taking notes, whereas students that are typing things in, they're not activating hard thinking in the same way. So there is a reason for that. But the point is with AI is that it's going to be such a transformation that there's, that we could be in a position where you could still be writing with pen and paper, but have, an AI platform leading learning and be completely responsive. It might be worth, checking out Dan Fitzpatrick's page on Twitter. And I think he posted a video recently about him talking to ChatGPT and just having a conversation with it. And bearing in mind, this is ChatGPT 4, which got released, I think late last year. It's the newest version of it, but obviously in 10 years time, the version that is now being used is going to look like, I don't know if you ever played Snake on one of those old
Yeah,
Nokia
I am
phones.
old enough to remember that.
Yeah.
As I'm sure some other
And
people in here. I'm looking at you, Mark Cratchley. You definitely remember that.
And how kind of twee that looks now compared to what you can do on a mobile phone now, and how much the progress that we've made. Now, just imagine that's the progress from Snake to like the mobile games that you now see on a phone, but times that by 100 in the same time frame. And that's the kind of opportunity and risk that comes with AI. It's the speed at which it can develop, because the truth is that the scientists and the developers that have made different AI platforms, they don't actually know how the algorithms get from A to B. They don't actually understand. So when you put a prompt into ChatGPT and it comes out with an answer, it's not the case that there's someone, like some smart developer who's programmed it to answer in that way. The intelligence has thought of that themselves, and they don't actually know how that algorithm has got from that prompt to that answer. That's all kind of calculated by the algorithm itself. So that's the challenge with it, is when those algorithms start to compound and develop, it's really hard to visualize exactly how fast and how far that progress will go. And the best way to see what that might look like is actually to follow some of the people that are kind of really prominent in the field, like Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI. There's a great podcast on Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett podcast, speaking to an ex-Google officer about it. It's a 2-hour-long episode. Wow. I've listened to it about 4 times. His message is to hug your children.
Oh.
So
you're not selling this to me,
Yeah, well, I mean, this is exactly how I felt when I spoke with Aaron months and months ago. It was a lot for me to take on board, because I was completely ignorant to what was going on. I just thought ChatGPT was going to be something that was going to help support, the work that I was currently doing and make things faster in the same way that current technology does. I just didn't understand quite how transformational AI has the potential to be.
So we've got a question here from Mr. Taylor, who I think was going to try and come on and ask it himself, but we've got it posted at the top here. So go with me on this. Will the future of teaching still treat education in a utilitarian view, or will it become learning for becoming learned? I think I know what he's getting at. But he has also, I think, followed it up. He's sort of clarified, but I can't find where he's clarified it. Oh, I think it's underneath. Utilitarian, as in doing education only to get a qualification or to have the skills to do a job, whether existing or possibly existing in the future.
Yeah, so I think it'll be less of that, because actually, so the purpose of education at the moment is like to some extent that utility. I mean, you have people that will argue actually it's not about that. Education is about growing your values and your beliefs and the ability to kind of be a good citizen. But there's certainly that utilitarian aspect to it, getting the high grades so that you can then get to university along that kind of meat grinder until you then get into jobs, until you pay your taxes, until you eventually pass away and then pass on to the next generation.
Cynicism is rife this evening. You actually made me, because one of my kiddos today, we were finishing off some stories that we've been writing with an escape theme. So they're escaping from a tornado, earthquake, whatever. And he said to me, he wasn't trying to be cheeky, he wasn't taking the mick, he just said, miss, in writing this story, how's it going to help me in the future? And I kind of gave him an honest answer. And I said, the story itself, it's probably not, that's the truth. It's not. But what we're doing here is we're working on your writing skills, the important talking being imaginative, being creative. We're building on a variety of different skills, and working on those and enhancing those. And he seemed to be satisfied with that answer. I mean, he's only 9 years old, so I kind of didn't want to go too dark, but maybe, I mean, I would be sad
we might
if that would be.
We might be on the cusp of a true enlightenment era, where actually humans have the freedom to pursue their highest kind of purpose, to be creative and to create whatever they want. Because actually, if jobs are less required, so if you think of like thousands of years ago, when we would have to go out and hunt to find food, most of your time would be spent hunting, like looking after the tribe around you, making sure everyone was warm, had shelter, you had food, you had water, etc. Now you can just go to Asda's or Tesco or whatever, and other supermarkets are available as well. But you can just go to those supermarkets, you can buy what you need, and that's like a tiny percentage of our processing power in the day. We use a tiny amount of our energy thinking about that problem, because that problem is just kind of sorted to an extent. Maybe not so much since Brexit. We're kind of missing a lot of fruit and veg in the supermarkets, but generally it's sorted. So we're not really thinking about that quite so much. But if jobs are no longer that much of a requirement, because a lot of that heavy lifting is taken away by AI, and there's maybe a concept of a universal basic income or something like that, where we're actually just given the freedom to do what we want to do, it might be the case that actually we see way more creativity coming out of humans, and the students that are going to school, it might give them free rein to actually learn what they want to learn, because they're learning for a love of learning, rather than learning because they need to get I was going to say a B, but obviously it's all 1 to 9 grades now. So then they need to get a 6 in GCSE English or whatever, so that they can get into sixth form to do the next stage of their education. And that could be a really fantastic thing. There's real possibilities for some amazing upsides from the changes that are coming as well. It's not all doom and gloom whatsoever.
So so on that note, and sorry to interrupt, do you think that, because of course we have for a lot of children and young people, traditional schooling, going, sitting in class with 30 plus children, often with just a teacher, rarely, I mean, I know that there are some classes that do have teaching assistants and support, and it's very kind of all over the show. Do you think that in utilizing this technology and in kind of allowing it into our space, and in kind of sort of making it kind of part of a bigger part of our curriculum, that it's going to maybe encourage more children to stay in school, have a better relationship with school than we've seen? Is there a scope for it to be really good in that respect?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's already kind of chatbots being created for dating, for lonely people, so they can have communications and build relationships with chatbots, because you can kind of decide. There's actually an episode of Black Mirror that's something like about this, where
I think I know the one you mean.
Yeah. So there's already kind of like technology for that, and I'm sure that would be very lucrative for the companies that do that. But if that technology exists to create those kinds of deep relationships, interpersonal relationships on that level, surely the technology can also be used to create really, really deep relationships with students that really understand the student, understand exactly what their needs and wants are, and find a way to kind of, I guess, push their learning forward constantly by being in sync with who they are. Because obviously when you have 30 kids in a class, you can't always cater for all those students' needs in every lesson. Maybe, say, I'm just going to guess here, Lucy, I'm just going to guess you're a really good teacher, and you have 80% of your kids really engaged during a lesson. I probably had about 5% of mine engaged when I was teaching.
Oh, I think you sell yourself short.
It's the truth. So like, I think there's definitely going to be scope for more personalized relationships with students and the ability to kind of build motivation of students. But again, what does a lot of that why are a lot of those kids unmotivated? A lot of them, a lot of students are unmotivated because they fear they can't fit into the worlds that they're going towards. They might be stressed about doing GCSEs and knowing that they're going to fail at them. That's a horrible thing to do if you're going to school every day, having to learn stuff, knowing or believing in your head that you're going to fail. So what's the point of you going all the time? But actually, if those kind of summative assessments are maybe taken away because there's no more requirement for that kind of knowledge acquisition, then, like I said, the relationship with school might be a little bit different. It might just be a place to really express yourself and to kind of reach your maximum potential.
Sure.
As a human being.
Yeah. I mean, there's just one of my many pieces of paper kicking around here. This is an article I found on LinkedIn. And a bit I've highlighted actually talks about career talks in schools. And it says many students give up in school when they don't do well in particular subjects, which is what we've just talked about. And there are instances where kids who are not fitting well according to school standards have made it big in real life. Students need more opportunities in schools to understand how the world is changing, what skills will be trending to help them earn their living, and what areas they need to focus on. They should get to hear stories of startups, innovators, problem solvers, volunteers, and change makers.
Yeah, I think the challenge with this is knowing what skills are going to be useful. So I think for years, people were saying, teach everyone coding. And one of the people that wasn't saying that was a guy called Andreas Schreider from OECD. And actually, now that ChatGPT's come out, I don't know if you're aware, but ChatGPT can code. I could make a website in about 1 minute using ChatGPT.
Amazing.
So actually, what's the point of learning how to code? And the people that the top tech companies are now hiring are prompt engineers. So they're English graduates. So people that know how to write really persuasively and correctly. So that doesn't mean that everyone should now be learning English because the requirements might change. And what the point I'm trying to make is, I think we put too much emphasis sometimes on what the market needs. And you see people that are extremely successful in their own niche. Just because they've done something that they love. A great example of this is, I'm going to use the example of my wife, who, when she was in school, she was one of the top ballroom dancers in the UK. And she didn't end up pursuing that. She ended up going to university, and she's now a teacher. Nothing wrong with that. She loves her job. She's a fantastic teacher. But if she'd stuck with ballroom dancing, we might be seeing her on Strictly right now. Because that was a niche that she was really good at. But she didn't pursue it because sometimes you worry too much about what the market is or what the job opportunities are. And actually, if you just find something that you really enjoy and you're really good at and you have a crack at it, and things kind of work out for themselves anyway.
Yeah, and it's I suppose you're often, I know when I was at school, it was kind of think about what you can do and how you can steer yourself onto a career path that's actually going to ensure that you make some money and can sustain yourself. It was less about entertaining the sort of random whimsical ideas that you have while sitting on your sofa staring into space or whatever it is, or while you're tinkering around with Lego or whatever it is. So again, maybe I suppose there's a wider conversation going on here about schooling as a whole, and the value in what we're teaching our children, not just in terms of sort of curriculum and things like that, but actually how to steering them and guiding them into living their lives. We're sort of getting into the very deep stuff here.
Sorry, I was a philosophy graduate, so my professor did tell me that at the end of my degree, all my friends would hate me, or my friend would hate me, because obviously you just end up chatting about really deep things in a systematic way. So yeah, my apologies.
No, gosh, don't be. I have a philosophy A-level, and you basically you've got a degree in pontificating. Which I think is a great thing, particularly when there's when you're having your brain picked by the likes of me on a Tuesday evening. So it's
what a fabulous Tuesday evening.
Oh well, I appreciate it enormously. And was it the OECD you mentioned just a minute ago? I think it was.
Yeah. So
Because I've got the 4 OECD scenarios for schooling. Well, I haven't got the entire thing printed out because it was pages and pages, but I'm sure you've looked through that as well.
I do not know that by heart.
Not by heart.
If you're going to
Neither
challenge
do
me on that,
I.
I
Neither
can
do I.
hold my hands up
Yeah, you're
and
gonna
say I do not know
be
that by heart.
tested now. But it's a whole. I mean, I have only kind of got the very sort of introductory bits here, but the idea behind the paper was to look into a variety of different ways, or look into the future of schooling, really. And so they were looking into things like learning hubs, learning as you go, and all the kind of pros and cons, really, of where they see the future of education going, and what it means for teachers teaching and teaching policies, what it means for for change in the world, whether we're going to end up actually outsourcing education altogether. I will post the link in my show notes to anybody who's interested in is looking for some actually very interesting bedtime reading here. I mean, there's so much to get through. It would be mad to go through it all now, but what they're wanting to look at is is to kind of try and see into the future and try and sort of work what we've got already. But again, as we've talked about, really it is an impossible job, because the rate and speed this is changing, we don't know what's going to happen next. But Nihad, if I was going to kind of really put you on the spot here, and this will be my last question to you, because I appreciate I've kept you for longer than I intended this evening, so I really will make sure this is my last one. If you can, where sort of in the next, I don't know what kind of time frame to give you, because again, we've seen all this evolve so quickly, but I suppose let's go next 5 years for argument's sake. In terms of education and schooling, where do you see the kind of the real technological development happening? Where do you see AI fitting in your mind? Kind of which bit is it going to gravitate towards? Is it education as a whole, or is it going to focus on supporting teachers, supporting students, online learning? Where, in your mind, what's kind of the big next step here?
I think it's going to impact every element of schooling, but the first place there'll be impact, I think, will be assessment, because of fears around things like plagiarism, using tools like ChatGPT. So elements like coursework, anything that students are doing at home, there's going to be a challenge in terms of identifying whether or not they're using tools to assist their writing or their work. So I think that element will get impacted from a negative point of view, in terms of schools trying to find out ways in which they can do assessment that's impervious to this to some extent. And then I think in terms of teaching and learning, there's massive differences. So just in terms of teacher workload, there'll be tons of tools where which show you how you can make kind of presentation, like teacher slides really quickly. I might do a video on this, actually, how you can link ChatGPT to Canva to make like 100 slides in a minute.
Gosh,
so
sounds like a lot.
That are all unique. Because you can do that, you can kind of speed up and automate that process of creating learning resources. And then there's the ability to use ChatGPT or AI tools to engage learners in different ways. So some of the examples which Dan uses quite a lot is, students talking to Henry VIII. So they might have a video of Henry VIII on a screen, and he'll be completely adaptive. So the students can ask him questions as if they've got him sat in the room, and he would then answer the students in the style of Henry VIII. So that might be a really clever way to just really engage learners and bring people into history in a way which, has not been done before. Or for modern foreign language learning, doing kind of scenarios with AI where you're having conversations around, buying bananas in a shop, but the AI is speaking back to you as, in Spanish or in German, and you're practicing back and forth. You're practicing those speaking and listening skills, which is an area which is really quite hard to build competency in modern foreign languages. But that's a way in which you'd be able to do that very easy and quickly and cheaply, without needing to kind of bring a foreign exchange student over or kind of do a lot of scaffolding within a lesson. So there's lots and lots of ways in which it can impact education. I would strongly recommend reading that working paper by Dr. Aaron Hamilton, Dylan William, and John Hattie. It is available for free, and there's some pretty crazy stuff in there when you read, things like human advancements with, like being able to download skills. I'm thinking of like the Matrix here, where they put the wire into the back of his head and he knows kung fu, that kind of stuff. But when you see names like Dylan William and John Hattie on a paper and they're talking about stuff like downloading a skill into your brain,
it seems like a while.
You take it serious. You take it seriously.
Oh, for sure. And I know I said that was my last thing, but I mean, obviously there are, we saw teachers when we all were pushed into online learning, really having to adapt quickly and learn quickly, and some were able to do it sort of more successfully than others for a variety of reasons. But would you say this is something that we just kind of don't be afraid of it, just kind of read around, find what you can, to those of us who, like me, are sort of very, very intrigued, but also a little bit kind of, oh gosh, is this kind of it? Is this sort of the end of my job as I know it? Because I know you said you had your reservations as well. So I suppose what I'm asking is kind of,
it's more likely to end my job than your job, I would say. So I mean, obviously I've created a platform to reduce teacher workload using verbal feedback, and my platform is very much designed around teachers giving feedback to students verbally through the platform. Now, obviously, we could be in a situation where AI could do that instead.
Yeah.
And that would make, if that became the mainstream, then in essence, maybe my platform would become redundant. Now, I don't think that would be the case for a number of reasons. I think feedback is really important to come from a teacher, from the point of view of that relationship being there. And also the best feedback is recursive. So when you're kind of reading through work, you're learning about that student and what you're going to plan for the next lesson, as well as also giving the feedback. So if you're going to take the time to read all the work, then you may as well give them a comment as well at the end of that process. So I don't think it's going to impact my business completely, but I think there's definitely more risk for me than there is for you as a teacher. I think teaching will probably be one of the safest jobs.
Yeah.
I think it'll be one of the safest jobs that's out there. I actually think
different.
I think it'll look different. And I think you'll have more people trying to become teachers because, like I said, doctors, lawyers, accountants are going to be much easier to replace. Taxi drivers, driverless cars, they'll be easy to replace. Those are the kind of roles which will be more likely to be replaced. I think teaching will be one of the safest jobs that's out there.
Well, I can only hope that you're right about that. So you have instilled I've learned a lot from you this evening. You've also instilled some comfort in me as well, that I'm not going to suddenly wake up without a job anytime soon. And that is being, I suppose, a little bit dramatic. But I think it is one of those things that it isn't going anywhere, and we do have to, as modern teachers, keep learning, keep updating, keep professional development and all those things. And I think that this is something that schools are going to have to look into as well, to make sure that their teachers are equipped and are prepared to utilize this technology in the best way possible. So let's see where we end up.
You'd be fine if the teaching jobs went anyway, because you've got your teacher radio experience, and Holly Willoughby's just quit this morning, so there's an opening there for you.
Well, I don't think I'm going to be top of the list for that. but I appreciate that. That's very kind. But Nahad, thank you so much for joining me this evening for even longer than I asked for. So I really appreciate all your insight and you giving up your time this evening to share everything that you have done. So thank you very, very much indeed. And I'm sure we will hear from you again soon. And I certainly will probably pick your brain in the future, or certainly when I come up against an AI question that I cannot answer. So many, many thanks to you. And please do enjoy the rest of your evening. And have some dinner if you haven't already, or a nice glass of something. I don't know. Entirely up to you. But no, it's been very, very insightful. And sorry, say again.
I'm going to say no, thank you very much. I'm going to enjoy an apple crumble now. So
I'm
I
very
took
jealous.
the privilege of making some homemade custard,
Oh,
and let me tell you, it's a game changer. That
oh,
silky, delicious custard, it's amazing. So
I
yeah,
do have
that's my.
one more question though. Do you have your custard with crumble hot or cold?
Oh, it's got to be so. The crumble and the custard have both got to be hot,
See, I'm a
obviously.
cold custard with crumble. Everyone thinks that's really weird.
Right. I think we need to. I think we need to end this
Okay.
conversation
Oh,
now.
right. I'm sorry. All right. Well, I tried. That's it. I offended you at the last hurdle. I was doing so well, but go and enjoy. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Cheers, Lucy.
Cheers, Dad. Thank you. Well, I had there who was sharing his thoughts, experiences with AI, linked to education, linked to the future of schooling, and comforting all us teachers in saying that he thinks that our jobs will be safe. So that is good to know. But doctors, lawyers, you've got to watch your backs, I'm afraid, because it's going to be you that are first for the chop. But I don't think just yet. I think we've got a little bit of a way to go first. But what do I know? I mean, I'm learning all the time, just like you are. So it's been very interesting this evening. But just a reminder as well that, you know, with all the challenges that come with this profession, you may need a union at some point, and that's where EDAPT come in. They're not your typical trade union, though. They are a modern apolitical alternative, and they offer expert legal advice as well as mental health support. So should you ever need them, be it for a minor incident or something a bit more problematic, then they are there for you 24/7. They will assign you a caseworker who will remain apolitical and independent, and they specialise solely in supporting teachers on an individual basis. So if you want to know more about them, you need to go to edapt.org.uk. So that's all the information there for you. In terms of the rest of this show, well, I think we've covered it all, to be honest. And I will make sure to post my show notes for you, including that very long document that we mentioned earlier, which was 4 OECD scenarios for schooling, because I confess I haven't read it all yet, but it is a very intriguing read to see how they feel things are going to go and where they feel education is heading. There's also a number of very good articles about traditional classroom teaching and the pros and cons in this day and age. So I will get those out to you as well. In the meantime, Tom Rogers, I don't know if you're there and can tell me who is on at 9 o'clock this evening, if anybody.
So we've got Emily next, actually.
Oh, we have. And what is Emily talking about this evening?
Emily is talking about positive pedagogy. Don't ask me what that is, but that's what she's talking about.
Well, I mean, you know, I have a personal allergy to the word pedagogy, but I'm sure that with the word positive attached,
Well,
it can
she's
only
great,
really
so I'm
be.
sure whatever it is,
She is great.
It'll
She
be
is
wonderful.
Great. And she's going to be over on Podbean, right?
Correct.
Excellent. So that'll be Emily at 9 o'clock. I'll be back with you in 2 weeks' time. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to chat to you about, but if you have anything that you would like to have discussed as a topic on Teachers Talk Radio, do let either me or one of the other hosts know. We're always on the lookout for ideas or for different topics that we can discuss, because many people, many hosts like me, treat their shows as kind of their dream CPD, the things that they would like to learn about, and being able to do that for free is great. So being able to listen into all these different shows is fantastic. And if ever you want to be doing what I am doing and sitting in the chair, which will be your sofa or kitchen table, but still the proverbial chair, then do get in touch with Teachers Talk Radio. You can find all the information about becoming a host through Teachers Talk Radio website, or you can find testimonials from all of us rather. But if you want further information, you can get in touch with us and join the club. It's a pretty great club to be a part of. So, you know, I thoroughly recommend it. I have been at this for over 2 years now. It's been a long old time indeed. So, and with no plans to go anywhere anytime soon, because there's still much more to discuss and much more to talk about. And things are changing in education all the time, as we know. So, without further ado, I'm going to leave it there for this evening. Have a lovely rest of the week. We're nearly there, nearly at half term, so hang on in there just for a little bit longer, and I will talk to you very soon.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.